Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Wrist Podcast. I am your host, of course, as always. You've come to know me, Blake Ray. And today we've got a special guest lined up. We are actually sitting down with Andrew Herman, who is one half of Panzera Watches. Founded in 2009 with his partner, Roger Cooper. Panzera is an Aussie brand at heart that is built on bold design, prioritizing rugged performance while not straying from accessible pricing. So, without further ado, let me bring Andrew into the conversation. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Hi, Blake. Great to be here. Thanks for
Uh,
inviting me.
yeah. Hopefully that does some justice for you. So I was like trying to think of what to say. So funny story. I've owned a Panzera watch,
Oh, okay.
and
I didn't know that. Okay.
I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody from the PR agency, but um, yeah, well, I kind of want you to start from the beginning. 2009. Like what inspired the creation of the brand?
Okay. Well, look, I was a bit of a watch fan since I've been a teenager, so I've always collected watches. And so has a good friend of mine, Roger Cooper, who we're both friends for many years. And we're discussing it one day, that the fact that we love collecting watches, but one of the frustrating things about collecting watches, I think everyone experiences this, is the high cost. I mean, you can probably buy one a year, maybe one every few months if you're wealthy, but and some people only buy one a lifetime because the high cost makes it very prohibitive to purchase. And so we decided, well, what about we start a brand to see if we can, not a brand, but to start a business that we could actually source and find relatively low costs but high quality watches that we could start to build a collection from in more volume. So that's how the business started. We got together. Roger was looking to start something new. He was working in the retail space, and we put our heads together. Thought this could be good. I actually had recently purchased a German brand of watch that was quite cost effective. We thought, why don't we try and distribute those? And we approached that brand, and they said yes. So we actually started off as a watch distribution company back in 2009. Um, it wasn't long after that, though, we decided, well, why don't we take this to the next level and see if we can produce our own watches? And what we did was we produced our own watches and found they were selling 3 or 4 to 1 the models that we were actually sourcing from Germany. So we realized
Wow.
we had a bit of a success there. But in the early days, uh, we were, doing the traditional model of, going to retailers, going to distributors, going to watch shows, trying to get people to take Apple watches and put them in stores, and it worked to a certain point. But it made us realize that the one objective which we really had, which was to produce watches cost effectively, high quality watches cost effectively, was that the major overhead we were facing was going through the traditional retail channels, which is go to a distributor, go to a retailer, let them put them in the window, hopefully they'll sell. And all of those parts have costs associated with them. All of those have margin. And we thought if we could, maybe get a more direct model, we could achieve our goal of producing more cost-effective watches without sacrificing the quality. And that's when the wonderful world of e-commerce came along, and we decided to go direct. And that's where the whole thing really took off for us.
Yeah, so I'm curious about, from what I read, your first watch was a Flieger style
That's
watch.
correct.
Is that accurate?
That's
How
correct.
how did that Flieger watch evolve into, what is now one of the Air collections?
That was an interesting one. What we did was we went out and we sort of found that a lot of the concepts of Flieger watches were actually public domain designs. So
Right.
effectively, they were built for actually for the German Air Force and European Air Forces during the war, and they'd actually retained that look, which a lot of brands were using. And we thought, well, if we do that, A, it'll be recognizable, and B, it was a really nice designed watch, very clean, very simple. So we used a classic Flieger, but since then we've evolved that into much more of our own design, and more recently we've added things like GMT functions. But it was originally designed to be true to the original Flieger design, which went back to the 1930s, and we thought that has a really nice heritage to it, and but also something that people can associate with.
It makes a lot of sense. And yeah, those Flieger designs, I mean, yeah, they were, I guess, intellectual property of the, I guess, yeah, I mean, it was government, right? I mean, they said,
Yes.
hey, look here, take this design language and bring it to scale. Funny. And going back to kind of what I mentioned, you guys have been doing tremendous work, and I don't say that very, very often, but you guys were one of the, I think, like the third watches that I owned,
Wow,
and
that's impressive, Blake. I didn't
it
realize that.
it was super cool. And I can't remember exactly how I found you, but there wasn't a lot of independent micro brand offerings at the time when I got into watches, like in the early 2010s. There was nobody really out there, right? It became cool to start a watch brand and like the later 2020 and so on and so forth, right? So everybody
Yeah.
seems to have this COVID related watch story. But I think I was looking for like a Panerai alternative, something with
Yes.
bold, clean design, that has great build quality, great finishing. And I ended up with an aquamarine
Yes.
45.
That's
And
something watch still today, actually.
you guys had something called, like, was it like the Ascent? Did I remember that correctly? Was it like the aquamarine?
Descent, it was one of
Yeah,
the
like,
models. Yeah.
yeah. That was like, that sounds familiar. Um, and yeah, I don't know exactly what happened. I had some weird watch, some weird watch griefs where I've lost watches, and I've had some issues where watches gotten stolen, and yeah, I sadly never replaced it. And I mean, that was one I wore, I don't know, for maybe like 6 or 7 years straight. I wore it for quite a while, and yeah, it was a great watch for me. So
Well, I mean, that's one of the key reasons we're focusing also on the producing these quality watches at a reasonable price point, is we want people to be able to wear them. I mean, there's so many people who have watch collections that sit in a box because they're so valuable, or they're very sensitive watches that can't go out. But all of our watches are built to be quite rugged, and watches you feel proud to be able to wear, but can wear them anywhere. That's one of our strategies.
I think you guys accomplished that. Um, as I was doing my research for this podcast, I mean, clearly we can tell you're Australian from your accent, but what
I'm glad to hear that, Blake.
you also touched a lot about being like, I mean, from the copy that I got on the website, like, you guys are not only from you're from Australia, but you're proudly Australian, and
Yes.
you try to bring Australian into the brand as much as you can. So what does it mean to be? And I can't even think of really any other Australian watch brands out there. So I'm
No,
curious.
there's not many. There's only two or three, and I think we're by far the dominant one. And look, part of owning a watch is owning something that's a bit different. I think that's something that's a bit unusual about watches. You don't go for necessarily the mainstream all the time. People like to have something that's a bit unusual, something that's a bit of a talking point, and being an Australian watch brand certainly gives us that. But if you look at our heritage, what we tried to do is bring a bit of the Australiana into the watch. And that's, if you look at the Australian lifestyle, it's about beaches, it's a big country, a bit like the US. It's got a fairly large attitude to things. So, watches are big, bold, they're all water resistant, they're rugged, they're designed to go to the outback, they're designed to go to the beach, they're designed to go snorkeling off the coast, surfing, all the things that we like to do. I think also fits in very well with your California style lifestyle too. It's very similar. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, we tried to make it a little bit of Australian, but we didn't want to be everything to everyone. I think if you look at our watches, they are not for people who like small, petite uh, watches that you wear under a sleeve. It's designed more of something that stands out, has a bold statement, and fits in with that sort of rugged lifestyle that we have here.
I'm curious to talk about if anybody's listening to any one of our podcasts, we always, whenever we have founders, co-founders, entrepreneurial stories, we usually love to talk about design. I can't do that with the
Yes.
big boys. So I'm curious about, how did you guys adapt your design language into, your air, land, and sea collection? And what defines a Panzera watch to you
Yeah, look,
and Roger?
yeah, well, look, it was actually a lot of evolution. We tried lots of different things. Some worked and some didn't. And we tried some very minimalistic watches, which we had called the Brow range, which did reasonably well. But then we found that the one like you bought, the Aquamarine and the
Right.
Flieger, which are very big, bold watches, really did a lot better. And we ended up finding the characteristics, which we had some very unique characteristics like skeleton hands. Um, we had a very clear, concise numbering without necessarily using numbers all the way around, but having very clear indications, giving it that sort of a feel of both that has commonality between a pilot's watch and a dive watch, which is easy to read, very big dials, concise numbering, not too much clutter. And we found that was working for us. So we've ended up coming up with a sort of a formula that works really well for us. And then we've added a couple of new ranges, such as the Classivo, which has given it a bit more of a classical feel, but still, once again, big, bold styling in that watch, even though it's more of a classical design. So we found some recipes, I suppose, along the way that worked for us, and others didn't. And some of our watches have fallen off the range as we go along, because when we started out, we tried different things that didn't work. But we're now on a very firm track now where we know exactly what works and what our customers like and what we stand for. And as I said earlier, we don't want to be everything to everyone. We want to be someone that produces a watch in a style that has this Panzera feel to it, which is this sort of big, bold, rugged, clear, easy to read type watch that you can sort of wear to a dress function, but also wear it when you go to the beach. That's our style.
Yeah, I'm curious. It seems like you guys, I mean, as I was doing again more research for this podcast, like, in the early days, I mean, you guys are now, not only have you been making incredible watches for a while, but now you guys are going up market. Like, you have some really, what I would define as, like, high end watches, specifically like the 45C, right?
Yes.
That's a $4,000 watch,
Yes.
um and yeah, so you also have, or I think from my understanding, you're kind of like juggling, not only being like, I guess, is it assembled in Australia? Did I understand that right?
Yes,
And
yes.
then,
The majority of our watches are assembled in Australia, but we have a number also assembled, which you've raised, like the Acme 45C in Switzerland.
wow.
And we went down that track because we realized that we did it as a bit of an experiment to start with. We weren't sure how well accepted Panzer would be as a Swiss manufactured watch, but we set up an operation in Switzerland, and it's really taken off big time because there are people that, especially people like yourself, who've tried the Australian watches and now want something higher end. And
Yeah.
there is that association that people like to have in owning a Swiss watch. We don't want them to have to move away from Panzera to experience that. And now the Aquamarine 45C, which is our most expensive watch, is also one of our best sellers. So it's
Wow.
quite interesting that high end thing has taken off for us really well.
Yeah, I mean, that's is great. I mean, you definitely have the balance, right? Because there are people that do want a Swiss label, right?
Absolutely.
For whatever reason, not necessarily it doesn't mean that it's better, but I think there's that perception now. I mean, there's great watches, that are made all around the world. China, like some of there's some high
Oh
end
yeah.
brands that are coming out of China right now. That people,
Chinese watches can be considered very good quality if you get the right ones. Yeah.
yeah, it's insane. So I'm curious to, all of our podcasts, we also talk about the entrepreneurial spirit, the journey, you know, as of right now, from what I've read, you guys have sold almost 300,000 watches in 100 countries,
Yep.
and you did it pretty much all by yourself. Everybody wants that. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people listening that are probably saying, how the hell did you do that?
Well, it certainly wasn't an easy road, but I think the whole revolution was the ability to leverage the e-commerce channel, basically selling through social media and Facebook and moving away from the traditional bricks and mortar style sales because it hasn't been an easy slug. I mean, we've had a lot of challenges. Getting someone to buy a watch without seeing it from Australia, when most of our biggest market is the US with 50% of our sales there,
Wow.
to get people from the US to purchase a watch from Australia sight unseen is a challenge. But we've sort of got it working. And when that happened, we realized, well, we've got our own brand. We can sell it anywhere. We've got e-commerce. So if we want to sell them to Japan, we want to sell them to Israel, we want to sell them to South Africa, we can. And we found the uptake to be really good, really positive in most of those countries. And, over the years, people have come to us from all over the world and purchase our watches. The claim to fame we have is we can deliver one of our watches anywhere in the world in 7 days. So it doesn't matter where you are, and especially during COVID, this was wonderful for us because people weren't going out to watch shops to buy watches, and they sort of did find us as a brand, and that's really helped accelerate us as well. But
How
yeah, we're very proud of the fact that we stand for getting rid of the overheads, in terms of being able to supply direct to consumers and passing on those savings to them. And that's a message that's resonated really well for us.
That's a pretty bold claim that you can pretty much deliver a watch anywhere in 7 days. Like, how did you guys get such a great understanding of, I mean, there's a lot of logistics and supply chain we haven't
Yeah.
even really talked about. So like, how did you guys get such a good, strong hold on something like that, like logistics? Like, how the hell can you deliver a watch anywhere in the world in 7 days?
Well, we've built some very good relationships with our logistics suppliers, and we just went down and we found the ones that could do it for us and optimized it. Roger's been really good in terms of working with those suppliers to optimize. They appreciate what we're trying to achieve, and we gave them really good targets that if they could achieve, we would obviously scale our spend with them. So they reached out and achieved it. But yeah, we've really optimizing things like that has been part of our strategy because without the price point or the attractive price points that we offer, people wouldn't necessarily feel confident enough to purchase a watch. If we were just the same price point as everybody else in the retail world, people wouldn't take a risk to purchase from us. But by doing this model where we go direct, we can save the consumer money, and they appreciate that, and they're willing to take a risk with us because of the savings that we offer them. And even on our Swiss watches, which we were talking about before, we don't, if you look at the A45C, it's got a Valjoux movement in it. It's a beautiful
Oh yeah.
timepiece, very classic timepiece. But at the price point we offer, it is still significantly less, although it's an relatively expensive watch. It's still significantly less than what you'd normally pay for a watch of that caliber. So those savings incent people to take a investment with us in terms of trying our watches, even though they haven't seen them. And the best thing is, of course, we have a 30% return rate. So people like yourself who've purchased one then come back and buy another. So it's really helped us accelerate the brand. Um, but doing things differently, I think, is really what's enabled us to achieve those numbers.
Yeah, I'm curious, and maybe you may have maybe we could put this on the record for the first time, right? So you have sold 300,000 watches in 100 countries. Freaking crazy. What are some of the countries maybe that you may or may not know of that Panzera hasn't reached yet?
The main ones we haven't reached yet, well, there are a couple we've reached and we've had to pull out of. South America, I think, is one of them because the taxes there when you import watches were like 150% of the price of the watch. So we didn't last very long there. Mexico, we have set up a really good distributor there because we had a lot of issues importing watches into Mexico. but we solved that problem by having an intermediary distributor there. So that's actually where we are selling it to. There are places where DHL don't deliver to. As you can imagine, we're not selling a lot of watches into Russia at the moment.
Sure.
And other places where there's no access. But primarily, the only two things that stop us selling are very high tax rates, import taxes, for direct-to-consumer products, and places where DHL and FedEx and the other big logistics companies we deal with don't travel to. But outside of that, we've supplied to military servicemen in countries where they're at war. We don't mind that as long as the logistics companies supply there, we can go there. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you guys are clearly doing something right. My dog, as you can probably tell, agrees with you.
I think he wants to get a Panzera watch.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. I'm curious about not only that too, but we talk to a lot of these founders and entrepreneurs that have a challenge with supply chain. Obviously parts are coming from Germany, Japan, Italy, Switzerland, sometimes China, like how did you guys kind of get all of that together, and how did you guys kind of buckle down and build out your supply chain that really helps to support, get watches into a price range that your customers feel comfortable purchasing, and how do you continue forward doing such things?
It's been a challenge, but as I said, we've got a really good relationship with our suppliers. That's the key. We have had our issues. Movements can sometimes be. We've had recent experiences where movements have been drastically going up in price due to shortages. Issues like that. We've had a period where we couldn't get movements. We've actually had to change the movement in some of our watches, redesign them, because we knew there was a shortage coming up of the movement we were using in one of the watches. And we had 3 months to get that sorted out, which is a real challenge. But overall, we've had really good suppliers. We forecast ahead. We keep an eye out for issues that are coming up, and we become very adaptive. As I said, once or twice we've had to look at changing the movement in a watch. Now, as long as it's a similar quality, movement from, Miyota to Seiko or vice versa, whatever, then we've been able to work around those issues. They have been there, but overall, we've had pretty good running, because we've always picked products that are scalable. So, if we try and minimize the amount of customization that's required to things like movements. And we have a really good supplier who's able to provide scale out of Europe for our key components and straps as well. We've had multiple suppliers, so that if one supplier can't match the requirements, we can switch over to the second, and or have two different suppliers providing us at the same time. So it's a bit of belts and braces we've used along the way, but yeah, we've managed to keep going all the way through without anything too many headaches along the way.
I mean, that's amazing. And still, as you can hear, my dog still agrees. Curiously, so the Aquamarine, like I said, was one of my first watches, like third watch. And as I was doing more research for this, I was actually disappointed to learn that now it kind of seems like you've tightened up the Aquamarine collection, because mine had a day and a date complication. And now that is not found anymore in the Aquamarine. And so also, funny story is, like I said, when I first got this watch, is my third watch. I have no freaking idea anything at all about watches, but here I am, right? And so I noticed, like, if I was like, if I turn my wrist fast enough, like the second hand would stop, right? And I'm like, what the hell is going on with, so then I reach out, right? I reach out to, your brand, Panzera's customer service, whoever, right? And I'm like, I think my watch is broken, like, and then, like, I don't even know. You guys were like, replied within like 15 minutes or something. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. But, come to find out, they were like, oh no, it's working. I recorded the video, sent it in, right? And they were like, oh no, it's working as intended. It's like a safety mechanism to keep like the movement I guess like something like, the movement that you were using at the time. And
I know exactly what movement was in it. Yeah.
and I was like, oh, okay. So not only did I get awesome support, but I also learned something about watches and movements at that time. Because like I said, I was very new into watch collecting, and there's also something that, I've talked about on some of my previous episodes about, sometimes making an image and marketing your brand towards, passionate enthusiasts or even entry level enthusiasts. A lot of the brands that we talk to now, they have that challenge, right? They can't be the first watch or the second watch or the third watch or the fourth watch or the fifth watch. They have to, I guess, wait their turn, and so how did you guys come around that's a huge hurdle, right? To, for new enthusiasts to feel comfortable investing, into a product like yours. I'd be curious to maybe get, some perspective on those things.
Yeah, look, it's been a challenge. And if I had to rate our biggest hurdle, it is getting people to feel comfortable to buy a watch for the first time. I mean, if you read most of our reviews online, which you can do on our website, it's amazing how many people say, "Got my first watch. It's amazing. I'm just about to order my second and my third, or this is
Amazing.
my fourth Panzera." Getting the second and third sale is easy because when people receive the watch, they say, "Wow, okay, this is really cool. It's a good watch. It's much better than I even expected." So, but that first hurdle is a real challenge. And the only way we've been able to do that is really to direct a lot of different types of messaging, both through the website and through social media advertising, to reassure people that this thing will turn up. It will be a great quality timepiece. And yes, although the price point is lower than what you're traditionally used to paying, you're going to get an exceptional timepiece for that amount of money. And that's been the whole focus of our challenge and both our social media. And I have to laugh because a lot of our customers, we now have a display suite in Sydney. We get to meet some of the customers come in. And a lot of the comments I get was, I had to buy one of these because on social media, I kept getting these stunning photos of these beautiful watches turning up, and they wouldn't stop showing them to me. And eventually I thought, well, I've got to go buy one. Otherwise, this is going to drive me crazy. So it is a little bit of repeat, show them the watch, give them different messaging, and really, displaying the watches in a positive way so that people feel, well, that's something I really, really want to own. I'm willing to take a risk. And the average conversion time frame for us is not short. It takes from first seeing a watch like you did on social media to buying one somewhere between 11 and 30 days minimum. So, it's sort of it is not an easy sales cycle, and it's not cheap for us to market during that period, but it does work in terms of getting people to the level of confidence eventually that they'll purchase.
I think that goes with any watch brand now. I mean, now you have so many different types of information at your fingertips. Somebody will, see a watch review on YouTube, and then they'll go down the rabbit hole looking around at the website. Then they'll try to find the watches locally if they can, and then
Yes,
they'll go back to YouTube, or maybe they'll end up at a watch show where they get hands on with it. And now watches more are about feeling. I've started to notice, people want to get hands on with something. People want to try it on their
yes,
wrist. People want to see if it connects with them, So I mean, you guys have been around since the early days of e-commerce, independent watch brands, and
absolutely.
I think it's just getting harder. It's just getting way harder now, from
Well,
my
it
opinion.
it is and it isn't. I think COVID was a major switching point for us because people did sort of move out of the bricks and mortar. Got to go down to the retail shop and buy my suit. Got to buy my watch. Got to buy everything. To wow, I can buy everything online. And once that switch has been thrown, people do like the convenience of it. I think the key for us is we offer very good returns so that people can actually buy the watch. If they're not 100% happy, they can return it to us. So that's a key aspect as well. But yeah, I think we're 100% committed that that's our as a differentiator. We'll give you exceptional quality for the value, but the risk that you take is you have to come and buy it without seeing it, and we try and minimize that by allowing you to return it if you're not happy, and giving you as much information about the brand and the watch as possible prior to you actually committing. So that's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. Something I've started to notice too is, as brands like yours, it seems like you're going up market, right? Particularly now, kind of trying to jump into a new price segment. Maybe that's been something that you've done a while ago and I haven't paid
Yes.
attention, so I apologize for my ignorance. But now, particularly challenging, a lot of your watches. I mean, your entry door seeming to be around what, $500, and then going up to, a couple $1,000, what, $4,050.
Yes, something like that.
Um, and now you're starting to see that 500 to $700 price segment is now becoming increasingly popular with I guess the big boys, maybe we can say. You start to see
Ah,
brands like Hamilton and
yes.
like another brand that I really enjoy, like Young Hans, and they've got watches in that price point. So how let's I'm curious to maybe you haven't felt any competition from brands like that because of your design language and your target audience and consumer and things like that. But how do you feel like you guys stand out in that price point?
We've been growing. I mean, it's interesting. We've had a lot of questions about tariffs and competitors and other
Oh
things,
yeah.
but the main thing is, we've continued to grow at an exponential rate, which is an indication of our success. But I think the thing that helps us is I think we've really refined our messaging around the brand, and as I mentioned before, we've sort of won this sort of design style. Now, I'm not saying our design style's for everybody. It's certainly not. But for the people that like that design style, I think we've basically built something that is really very attractive to them. And as you pointed out, I don't think someone who's interested in a lot of these other brands necessarily would affiliate with our brand style or or vice versa. So we've tried to identify a style that's really worked for us, which is called the Panzera style. And I think also the value proposition you can buy good watches for that amount of money, but we like to think that what you're getting in terms of both the design, the quality, and the ruggedness, etc., you get from our watches at a similar price point is still very exceptional compared to equivalent models at similar prices.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree. I mean, especially I think when I was on my journey, I don't even remember how much I paid for my Panzera, and then back then, I mean, it just seems like nobody was doing bold, rugged tool watches. I think that's, if I could say, Panerai, right? Again, it was kind of the brand that I was like, hey, like I love Panerai, but I can't afford a Panerai. Like I want something that feels just like a Panerai, that looks like a Panerai, that's bold, that's rugged, that is, unmistakably, in your case, Panzera at this point. So, I don't know if my wife got it for me, or I found it, or I started talking. It's been a really long time. Like it's been 20 years,
Exactly. And so you're
so
one of the people that found something you like that's in our design criteria, and there's not a lot else out there that matches that same characteristics.
yeah, and then the price segment, right? Like, you find yourself in that, okay, it's crazy. I'm going to spend $500 on a watch, And then I was talking about this with somebody like relatively recently. And then as you start going down the rabbit hole, you're like, okay, I got my $500 watch. I love this. All right. Maybe my next watch will be like $1,000. Okay, $1,000. Cool. Like, the wife
Yeah.
approved it. Cool. And then you get your $1,000 watch and you're like, oh shit. Okay. Maybe my next watch will be $2,000. Like you start nudging yourself up
Well,
because
and that's exactly what started the whole brand. If you look back to my original story, the whole idea was, how do we make collecting watches not so inaccessible that you can build a collection for thousands of dollars, not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
yeah.
we've got guys out there. We've got some quite well-known celebrities actually who own 12 or 15 of our watches, which is a real compliment. And they've built a collection just out of our range, which is really nice. But at $500, you can afford to buy a watch every 6 months or a year and add to your collection. Whereas if you're paying $5,000 to $6,000 or $10,000, it's very hard to justify building a collection up unless you're very, very wealthy.
I'm curious. So we always ask this question, but you own a watch brand. You can pretty much make any freaking watch you want to, right? It seems like. So tell me which watch from the collection is still your baby.
This one here. It's
I'm
the
gonna, I'm gonna blow you up.
Aquamarine 45C.
Oh
It's our Swiss
man.
model. I'm very proud of it because we sort of launched it as a bit of an experiment, being a very high-end watch. We weren't sure whether it would sell well under the Panzera branding, but it's become probably one of our top two best-selling watches we have, even though it's a very high price point. It's hand assembled in Switzerland. It's a really nice design. It's a chronograph using a Valjoux movement. So very proud of it, and very proud that we can, be considered up there with the high pedigree watches, not just at the entry level ones as well.
I am looking at it right now, kind of drooling a little bit on the website at the same time. Most people always ask, I'm doing a little bit of multitasking here on the back, and that watch in the blue dial, or
Yeah,
even on the what is it, like a yellow rubber strap?
yeah, yellow rubber accessory, because
Oh,
the yellow highlights in the dial sort of just really match the.
oh man, great, great looking watch, man. um, I'm curious, and let's talk about a little bit of some of the inspiration, right? We like to jump around here, so I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah, sure,
sorry
sure.
for that. But it seems like you talk about, or I guess maybe I read or alluded to that you talk about taking inspiration from adventure, right?
Yes.
Is that did I understand that correctly? Like flying, sailing, outdoor
Yeah, yeah,
life. I think you guys in Australia are known for that, right? Like outdoor life, right?
absolutely.
That's your thing. So how do you
Travel, adventure, ocean, warm weather, deserts, hiking, the usual outdoor type. Very, very outdoor country, Australia. Very outdoor focused.
how do you infuse that mentality, that energy, like into the watches? Maybe that's a challenging question, but
Well, it's about. I think the thing is, I think the real contrast. I think if we wanted to pick the real contrasting factor for our watches we wanted to build a watch like this you could wear out to, wear that with a suit. You can go to any function. You can wear a black tie wedding, but it still has to have that outdoor character. So this watch is 200-meter water resistant. It's still big. It's still bold. It's still rugged. So it needs to fit into that characteristic of being versatile. I mean, we love going out to fancy events here in Australia, just like everywhere else, but we also will probably hit the beach the same day that we go out to something at work. So,
right.
it needs to be that versatility that fits in with the Australian concept. And I think that's what I wanted. I want a watch you can wear everywhere. And I think apart from, the ruggedness, the price point means these watches aren't something you have to sit at home in a box, and will only be worn out for special occasions. And that's something I think we've always wanted to track through. We wanted a watch you can wear anywhere, no matter which model you pick. It's got to be something you don't just wear to the gym because it doesn't look good, but it also has to be something you can wear to the gym if you want to look good straight after the gym or even when you're at the gym. So it's a versatility that we put into our watches, and I think that fits with something you can wear anywhere, be it outdoors, on a hike, on an adventure, down the beach, at a formal dinner, whatever. It needs to be a watch you can take anywhere. And that's something that's gone into every one of our watches. There's not one of our watches that you can't go into a pool with, even if it's one of our dress style watches.
Something that you also failed to mention is 200 meters of water resistance in an automatic chronograph is freaking insane and an engineering nightmare unless you have those screw down crowns, right? Which in your case, I
Absolutely.
mean, you guys don't have those screw down crowns, so I can already just assume. I mean, just screw down crowns suck. Let's just all admit it for chronographs, right? Let's just all put that out there.
I hate to point it out to you, but we do all of our
Oh,
watches have screw down crowns. Yes, they do.
for the chronograph
Yep,
pushers,
absolutely.
really?
No, not for the program. Oh, sorry, my apologies. For the
Oh,
actual crown, for the
no,
crown.
no, the crown is perfect for screw down, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
chronograph pushers,
No,
like
no, we don't
those
have.
suck because then you're like, let me
Yep.
unscrew my crown here to start my chronograph.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
no, I agree with you there. Sorry, I was misinterpreting what you're saying
no,
there.
no, no, yeah. So maybe I misspoke, but which is also insanely challenging, right?
Yes.
Because you don't have that screw down there. I mean, I'm sure that was an engineering nightmare to your design team where you say, hey, I want an automatic chronograph that's 200 meters of water resistance. They're probably like, oh, we need to find a new job. We need to find a new job. We're not going to be able to pull this off.
So yeah, no, well, that's what we like to push, the boundaries. I mean, the thing is, when we built this one, we wanted to have everything because it was a introductory, high-end watch. We thought, well, we're not going to hold the stoppers back on it just because of chronograph. We're not going to reduce the water resistance. We're not going to reduce the reliability or the ruggability of the watch. It still needs to be a Panzera. So we did push the boundaries a bit there, but we managed to get it through. And part of its charm is its nautical feel. It's one of those watches you can go sailing or diving with, but also wear it to any quality function that you need to as well. It really fits that Panzera mold really perfectly.
I'm also kind of curious, Andrew, and this is probably something that it might be a sore topic, maybe not, but you're selling watches in 100 countries. Like, how do you support your customers? Like, I mean, that's challenging. Like, these are watches, these are mechanical watches. They're designed to be worn in every instance, right? You just mentioned that. Like, they break, they they stop running, you get some moisture, condensation under the dial, oh shoot, I gotta send it. Like, how do you even start to approach to develop a support infrastructure, to even support sorry?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. I was done there. I was just rambling.
Yeah,
rambling.
that was probably one of the first things also to differentiate us. I didn't really cover that. Was when you set up an online business, having a support infrastructure is critical because people don't have the confidence they can just take it back to the shop they bought it from. So what we have set up, and we did this very early in the piece, is a 24/7 support system. So, we've got customers around the world, so we can't just have it running during Australian time zone. So we thought, well, let's set up something that's real time. You can go online now and have a chat to one of our service agents now on our website and ask them a question, and you'll get a response back within a few minutes. And that's critical because we do need to have a support structure that can handle all these different countries. But also we get some, often these are first purchases, and people will come back and don't realize they bought an automatic watch and it's going to stop working if they don't wear it after about 2 or 3 days because they're used to wearing a battery operated watch. The number of queries we have around that is quite high, surprisingly.
Well, that's actually a compliment that people who don't even know what an automatic watch is are still purchasing your watches. So, dude, that's a compliment in the weirdest way possible.
It is. And being able to service those customers has been very critical and a very core part of our, strategy in business to offer, first class service. The other key thing is we've always used what I'd classify as sort of broadly accepted movements. So even this one uses the Valjoux 7750, which in the Swiss watch world is quite well known. So, if people want to service in 5-10 years time, they don't have trouble getting parts or taking it to a local, watch agent to get it repaired if they want to. Obviously, during warranty period, we take care of all that for them, and we get the watch shipped back to us if we need to and get it repaired or replaced. But after that, the watch can run indefinitely because all of our watches use very well-known movements that have been around for probably decades. Either the Seikos or the Modas or the Valjouxs or the Swiss ones, which basically means that those watches can be maintained locally by our customers indefinitely in their own countries.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's all about, and you start to see the push. I've talked about this publicly pretty often too. Like, a lot of brands have been reliant on a a retail experience, right? Where they're in a multi-shop where there's 10 brands, 15 brands, 20 brands, and one person can go and look at all the different watch brands and get exposure to the brand through that, right? But there's also a problem with that approach that if you buy a watch from a multi-brand store, let's just say if you buy whatever it is, Tag Heuer, IWC, Panerai, whatever, you're not a Panerai customer, right? You're not an
No.
IWC customer. You're not a Tag Heuer customer. You are a multi-brand insert name here customer, and they own that customer, right? And so you're starting to see brands that try to figure out ways that they can own those customers, insert in-house movements. This is where they come in, right? Like, okay, cool. Let's design our own movement architecture and let's make it impossible for local watchmakers to service or,
Yes.
get parts for, or, whatever. And then, that's not working. They're not taking back their customers enough. So let's open our own boutiques and, let's do this and see if we can capture customers that way. And you guys never really had to worry about that because you were always focused on just producing a great quality watch, making an accessible price point, figuring out how you can, ship it logistically into that country, right? I'm sure. And just focus on, again, just giving a quality product instead of figuring out, you already own your customer, right? They purchase it directly from you, right? Like usually, I mean, you guys are direct to consumer.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got all our customers, and our biggest asset, I think, is our customer list of people that have purchased and or expressed interest in purchasing, because that's something we own, and we like to build a relationship with our customers. And when we launch a new model, of course, the biggest number of orders we always get in the first few weeks are existing customers coming back to buy something new off us, which is something that's both very flattering and very important to us.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, this isn't supposed to be one of those podcasts where I'm just really praising you for everything. But whatever the PR company reached out to me, and I can't even tell you how many times I get all these PR agencies that want to reach out and they want to bring their brand on my podcast and have this story, have this discussion. And unfortunately, I do ignore a lot of them. But when they said it was you and Panzera, not that I even knew you, right? I didn't even know you because I mean, you guys aren't, you guys don't put your face out there, right? You let the watches speak for themselves, right?
That's true.
Obviously, as I did some research and I found your name on the website and I found Roger's name on the website, and you talked briefly about starting watches and the watch brand in 2009, but it becomes challenging. Like, which brands do I sit down and do this with, and which ones do I not do this with? And your PR people are very persistent, I will say. so good job.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, good job. And then the second they said Panzera, I was like, let's make it happen. And yeah, obviously I've been traveling, and so we had to do a little bit of weird rescheduling and stuff like that. But as I was doing research for this, I also, when I started reading, because I had no idea, that you guys were, I guess I knew you were successful. I just didn't know that you were this successful at selling watches, one. And then I knew you had a great product. And then, now to see that you guys are coming full circle and delivering on, what I would say the next quality product, with some of, you even brought up the 45C. And also, as I was reading on the about, like, side of the website, and I was like 300,000 watches in 100 countries, which is, again, I've said it, freaking crazy. Then I started poking through the website a little bit more, and I was like, okay, like, who helped Andrew do this? Who, like, which celebrity is it that helped you do this? And then I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find any like celebrity endorsements or like, like hitching your name onto somebody else's fame. Because brands do that, right? They're like, they'll throw their lasso around the celebrity and use that to climb their way to the top and get attention, right? And it seems like you guys have never even really done that. Is that accurate? Like, you don't have any ambassadors. It's just your customers are the ambassadors, right?
We do have a few ambassadors. In fact, we're about to launch them, but they're not ambassadors to the point where people would go, okay, wow, I know that person. Because I hate to point it out, but it's sort of exactly what we're trying to avoid, which is we could go pay a couple of $1 million to a very famous celebrity to endorse our watches, but that million dollars or multi-million dollars would have to then go onto the price of the watch to then
Yeah.
endorse. That pushes the price up again. So the whole idea is we're trying to cut all that out. We do have ambassadors, but they're people like, the aggressor squadron pilots in the US Air Force have selected our watches, and
Wow.
we've had to put a piece up about that. They selected it themselves, and they're using our watches now as their sort of customized squadron timepiece. We've got a very famous baseball player who owns 12 of our watches, a US baseball player, but
Oh wow.
we haven't been able to, we would like to ask him if he'd be happy to be one of our ambassadors, but it's these sorts of people are behind the scenes, and we don't tend to push paid ambassadors. But we'd like to get people, a bit more people aware that we do have these very famous people wearing them, but they're not wearing them because we pay them to wear them. They're wearing because they actually like them and have
Yeah.
selected them themselves. So it's a bit of a different approach, but we've tried to go away from that. It's all that whole the three things we discovered that push the prices of watches up when you go and pay, $12,000, $13,000. It's not because the watch costs are very, huge, significantly more than ours to manufacture, but it's the fact that they're paying for stores. You look at a lot of the watch stores; they're very premium stores that cost a fortune in rent.
Oh
You
yeah.
then pay a distributor, and the third thing is they're paying these ambassadors huge amounts of money, or they're sponsoring Formula One, or they're sponsoring something else that costs millions and millions of dollars. That then has to get added to the cost of the watch to get their money back. And that's where we're taking a very opposite approach. We're saying, let's cut all that out and go with our own merit and bring a watch in that's good value.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly haven't hung your hat on that strategy, which is again, unfortunately, I think a lot of brands have no choice but to do it at this point. Sometimes.
No, I think you're right. If you want to get accelerated and you wanted to get out there, you're doing everything the same as everybody else, especially if you're going through a retail channel, you need to have a differentiator. And that tends to be an ambassador that people think, I'd like to be, they're my hero, they're my aspiration, or I'd like to be like them and wear the same watch as they do. And that's a good strategy. It just is a very costly one, and it does add to the cost of their products.
I'm curious to maybe we could talk about how you guys engage your customer base, your community. Like, um, you're starting to see kind of a surge in independent brands that are essentially like cutting down the communication lines to their customers. Whether you have the founders that are putting their email on the website, or having Facebook groups where your staff, your employees, or you guys or on Reddit, right, where you have a subreddit, and then people are from Panzera are actively engaging with customers, or not only engaging with them but supporting customers. So I'm curious, maybe you guys are already doing that. How do you engage with your consumers, your customers, your fans of the brand, and what does that look like for a Panzera customer?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's something we're changing at the moment. Traditionally, we've just used email. I mean, we have a mailing list which has got very large numbers of people on it, which we reach out to people, on a regular basis, probably once or twice a week, to give them updates and offers and communicate with them that way. But more recently, Roger and I have sort of stepped out a little bit from behind out of the shadows, because we tried to keep ourselves a little bit distant from the brand and let the brand run on its own merit. But we've had some recent engagement with a bit of a vlogging team who think that we could really add to the brand by coming out and sharing our lifestyle and a little bit of stories about the brand, etc. And we
Yeah.
just started doing that. Our YouTube channel is now starting to pick up a little bit of regular content from Roger and I, and we're doing a little bit of direct social communication back out, which then we also share to our customers via our mailing list as well. So we are starting to come out a little bit more, and Roger and I started to become a bit more of a face of the brand, so that people can feel comfortable that we're not just an organization, but we're real people who produce real watches, and who we are and what we stand for.
Authenticity is very important, as I'm sure you're
Exactly.
you know this, and now the lines from authenticity and being genuinely authentic and faking authenticity have been blurred, unfortunately. And you have brands that are like manufacturing watches, or that are pretending that they're manufacturing watches in this country or that
Yes.
country, and you don't see anybody's name on the website, so
No.
you don't people are faking this these days, which is
Oh,
sad. It's sad.
it it is very, very sad. And a lot of brands are just brands, like they're just taking products that already exist in other countries, even China, and bringing them in and rebadging them and pretending that they've got a brand. But we wanted to make sure people. I mean, I've been keeping up the Australian accent pretty well on this show for the last.
All right, so once we stop recording, you can drop the
Go back
accent.
into the American accent again.
So curious, as Panzera continues to grow, what can we expect? Is there complications you guys maybe you could talk about you're exploring, or maybe materials, or maybe innovations that you hope to bring to the brand? If you could talk about that, that'd be
Yeah,
exceptional.
look, there's Roger and I get together and we often discuss where we want to go in the next 12, 18, 24, and 5 years. But I think the key thing we've learned is originally we were tossing up when the success of the uh, the the effective of the Aquamarine 45C, our Swiss premium watch, and a couple of other Swiss models took off. We thought, well, maybe we should move the whole brand to be Swiss based. And one thing I can assure everyone is we're not doing that, because we've sort of developed what I think is a really nice strategy of people who want to spend $500 to $1,000 on a watch still can, and that's probably still our biggest market. But people that want to take advantage of owning a nice, Swiss watch that's good quality, that also has that same advantage of being able to buy direct from as a consumer and save money, but have a quality of owning a Swiss premium watch, can as well. So we're keeping the two ranges running in parallel. So we've got the Australian-made watches, and the Swiss watches is something that we're going to maintain. What we are thinking of doing is bringing out something very, very high end. So we're going to call it something that'll be very limited edition. It will have all sorts of unique complications, and it will be only available to people that have purchased one of our watches before, and in very, very limited numbers. So we're going to make that, because we do have a lot of fans within the Panzera family now, and we think they'd like to have something that's very exclusive, and we'd like to have something very exclusive also that will act even more of a halo sort of model for the rest of the range as well. So that's something we're toying with, is coming out in the next few, maybe within the next year or two. Then there's also just expanding the range. We found that our pre-order model works really well. We bring out a new model, it always goes well. People like to have something new and fresh, especially if they're already existing Panzera owners. So we'll be continuing to bring out new models within each range, probably one every 2 or 3 each year. But they'll be along the same lines and making sure it fits into that Panzera group. So, but nothing too radical in that space, but definitely continuing to bring out new models that will enhance the range in each of the four core areas that we focus on.
Also curious too, are you guys looking, because you have a sports range, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't really consider it to be like inspired by like motorsport, right? It's more of a like a diver. I'd say it's more of a diver-esque sports range.
Yes, the Mecca
But
range. It's just
are you guys looking to anything like that? Like, I mean, if you're from Australia, you probably are into F1, right? Maybe.
well, we are definitely doing fine, and we
Okay.
also sponsor one of our sort of, I suppose, call him ambassador, but one of our sponsored athletes is a GT4 driver, an Australian
Oh,
GT4 driver. So we do tend to favour that, and we do have one model, the Time Master 45, and also the Time Master 43, which is sort of around that sort of motorsports range, but we sort of group it into that sports group, which is a little bit general. And I think that's something we need to look at. I think we do need to come out with something a little bit more motorsport focused within our group.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to maybe see if there's something there, because you're starting to see a lot of brands kind of embrace motorsport and just racing in general, and have great success with it, because the dive watch category is actually the I guess the saturated category, and you guys have that mastered, right? If you
Yes.
if you've mastered the dive watch category, usually it's a safe I mean, again, I'm not here trying to tell you how to run your brand, of course, but if you've mastered the dive watch category, then usually it's a safe play that you might have success in, like, motorsport, or you guys have what I would consider some field watches already, right? So
Yes.
so yeah, I think that would be crazy to see something like that, coming around the pipeline, and then
No, no, it's funny you should mention that because Roger and I were talking about it. We definitely need to have a bit more of a motorsports-focused watch. The Time Master sort of was filling that field, but I think it's time for something a bit new and more fresh to fill that particular space. It's a very important area. I mean, one area that's done really well for us is the GMT side of things, which we've now launched 2 or 3 models in that space, and they've done really well because having an affordable GMT watch sort of fits into both. They can work in conjunction with diving. It can work in conjunction with travel. It can work in conjunction with adventure or explorer. But it's an area that's really done well for us in the last 12 months.
Yeah, now I'm sure, and this is probably one of the more challenging questions that I think I might ask you today, and you might hopefully answer. But now that you have your baby, right, Panzera, your baby, what does the legacy look like for Panzera, right? Like, how do you archive this thing? How do you make sure this thing keeps going beyond, Andrew and Roger's days?
Well, that's a very good point, and I think about this quite a lot. I mean, everybody says you should have an exit strategy for a business, and I suppose you should. I think we should have one. But my also concept is maybe it's something we can pass down to our kids. I mean, having a family business based on watch production is something that is very, you know, powerful. But also the thing is, a watch company, the longer it runs, the more heritage and pedigree it has. I think the hardest challenge for us was when we were a 2-year-old business trying to get watches out there, and people hadn't heard of us at all, and there was no history, there was no background, there wasn't a large customer base to refer back to get reviews from, etc. So the longer the business runs, the more powerful it becomes. Um, and we've seen nothing but growth over the last 15 years since we started the business. So as long as that continues, I could very easily see it being something we could hand down to our, both Roger and I have kids, we could be something that we could potentially hand down to our children one day as something that they can work with us on, be part of the business and grow and learn how to run it and keep it going indefinitely. I mean, I'd love to think of Panzera as something being, you know, 100-year-old business in 100 years' time. So, or 115-year-old business in 100 years' time. So, it's something that could potentially do. And as you know, legacy is something that is very powerful in the watch industry. It's not something that necessarily goes out of vogue. I think the longer a company runs, the more people sort of respect the brand.
Is that something that maybe you've even, I guess, tried to, like, hint at, your children? Like, hey guys, you
My, my
know?
my son has a whole list of funny names for our range of watches. He calls what do you call it? The Time Master's the Tomb Master. So
Okay.
he's got a whole lot of. And there's the aquamarine bubble or something he calls other things. So he's a teenage boy now. So he is sort of playing around with business. But he asked for one of our watches for his birthday present, which I thought was a
Oh
nice compliment.
man,
So yeah,
that's
last year.
crazy. That's crazy awesome. I'm sure that's like one of those first full circle moments for you where you're
Yes, absolutely.
like, how does this happen? That your son is asking for a birthday gift of something that you created.
Exactly. It was very complimentary, and especially for a teenage boy these days to ask for a watch is quite unusual. Normally, they want a smartwatch or something, but
Which
he wanted one of our Time Master
Oh, okay.
watches. So
I was about to ask
I had
which
to
one
give
which one was he asking for.
yeah,
So, um, but no, no. And then this is gonna be the final one that we leave you with, or maybe on at this point. Um, I'm curious about your goals for the future. Everybody has them,
Yep.
in 20 years, 15 years, you and I can look back together and laugh because we recorded this podcast for one. And I want something to hold you to additionally, so what are you hoping for, in the future of Panzera?
Oh, I'd love Panzera to be. We're a successful brand at the moment, but we're not probably we're not a household name. I'd love in 20 years' time for Panzera to be as well known as some of the other big watch brands out there. Not necessarily the same pedigree or cost base or selling $100,000 watches, but well known enough to say, well, I know what Panzera stands for. I've heard of Panzera. You can go around and you go to a pub and you talk to your mates. I bought a Panzera. Oh yeah, I know that brand. They're a really good brand. We know them. Of course, we know them. Everybody knows Panzera. So I'd love it to be one day one of those brands that people not only, is not only a brand that's successful, but is also potentially a household name and well known, as I mentioned before, maybe part of a family business that Roger and I family has, diversified into all working in and being part of.
That would be exceptional. And yeah, I mean, Panzera, and I mean, you can go back and listen to every single podcast I've ever recorded. And I don't think I've ever said this, maybe once or twice, right? But there's very few brands that hold like a very kind of special place, in my heart as a collector. And yeah, I think I told you, like I said, obviously Panzera was one of the early brands for me. Obviously, I'm not being paid to say this as far as I'm aware. And if I am, please tell me where the check is going.
Hang on, I'll just hand this watch over to you over here.
But seriously, in all seriousness, you guys were early into my watch collecting journey, and yeah, it's a brand that I would love to see, continue forward, and to be that, right, to be that household name, and for people to experience what it's like to own one of your watches, because for me it was a companion, sadly is it's one of those ones that got away, man, like it's a sad story. It's a sad. I think it was like I was in my watch cases and my watch case. Yeah, I got robbed.
Oh, that's not good.
And I never got it back. But anyways, yeah, it was one of those brands that was a companion for me. And I didn't know watches. I didn't know watches, but I knew Panzera, and I felt comfortable wearing it every single day, and I'll never forget, because when I first got it, I didn't even really understand like materials or quality or anything. I was too scared to go into, a nice store and ask to see a Panerai or an Omega. I was too scared, right? Because I don't want to, I can't afford those, and I'll never forget. I had your watch. I was doing a lot of traveling through the world, and I had a couple more watches at the time. I had like maybe like 5 or 6, and there was only one watch I took with me. It was your Descent. I think it was called the Atlantic Descent,
Atlantic
right?
Descent, that's right. We based on the dial colors. We sort of got rid of those names because it made it a bit confusing, but we still have the same model available.
Yeah, the aquamarine,
Yeah.
and that strap, man, like that strap was just so supple, so soft. I mean, you think about that, right? How can you wear this and comfortably wear this, right? And again, so I think that's
Well,
all I got from my glowing endorsement. But I
well,
just remember,
it's worth adding that we do get to meet our customers, and it is interesting that diversity. There's people like yourself, where it's one of the first watches, but we get a lot of people who own big watch collections of Rolexes and Omegas, and they still, very complimentary about the quality of the watch, but they just feel it's something they can wear every day.
yeah, it's a watch that you don't have to keep up with. Like it's designed to keep up with you, right?
Exactly. Hey, we should
And
get you working in our marketing department.
I'm 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 looking for work, but
I like that. That's a good catchphrase. Yeah.
it really is though, because I have watches now that I have to keep up with, you
Yeah.
know, and I have Rolex, I have Omega, I have Panerai, you know, I have all these brands. I have, you know, Zenith, you know, and I have these watches that I have to keep up with. And it's nice to have watches you don't have to do that, you know.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to look at watches like, how can I get a watch into my collection that A, complements my collection, you know, two, feels familiar, right? And you know, is something that I love to wear and appreciate. And how is it a watch that I can just wear effortlessly, you know?
Exactly.
You know, if something were to happen, you know, and it I think, you know, when that watch was stolen from me, and there was like 6 or 7 other watches that were stolen, and they were, you know, Invicta or this or that, you know, it's something that definitely caused grief, you know, like emotional grief, but it didn't cause a lot of financial grief. You know,
Yes.
I'm not like, oh shit, like, you know, like having to file the insurance claims with the insurance
Yes.
company, and like, you know, like losing sleep over and having to go file a police report and do all the, and you know, I did, right? I did file a police report, but you know, it's not something where I'm like, okay, I just got set back like for the whole year. Like I can't buy another watch for the whole year because I just lost a $6,000, $7,000 timepiece, you know, like so it's nice to have that. It's nice to have a watch that can keep up with you and not have to keep up with it.
But
So
still looks good. That's the key thing. Make you feel good. That's the
that
whole concept of a watch. Yeah.
yeah, it did that. And it did that very well. It did that very
Yeah.
well. So we are literally coming now to, I mean, just over an hour. And I want to turn my platform over to you if I can, you know. So we talked about a lot. We talked about, you know, the craftsmanship, the production, customer experience, values, you know, the identity, the design philosophy, you know, the future, right? The future, right? You know, I can't wait to see some of the collections that your son names, but no, what would you like to say to our entire audience? 60 countries are listening right
Wow.
now.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Blake, for having us on the show. It's been really, really, really interesting and a wonderful discussion, and you've asked some really great questions. But you know, we're very proud of our brand. We'd like people to, you know, come and discover us. Go to the website, learn more about us. Make sure you feel comfortable. Do your research. But I think have a look through our reviews. I think our reviews speak for themselves. You know, we've got people out there that have massive watch collections of very high-end watches saying that, you know, our watches are equally, if not better quality, and make them also enable them to wear watches. But we're a brand that's based on two guys who absolutely love watches, and we're very proud of the watches we produce, but we produce them for one reason, and that is exactly what you described before. And that is, you know, we want watches you can wear anywhere, feel comfortable, feel proud to wear them, not worry about you know, the fact that you're going out to go to a beach or go swimming or where you happen to end up. You can wear a watch, or worried about losing the watch, or being, you know, some countries you can't wear a nice watch anymore because you wear a high value watch, you may not make it home. Our
Yep.
watches are watches you can feel safe wearing anywhere, but you're still proud to wear them, and that's what we stand for as a brand. So get out there, learn more about us. Hope you feel comfortable. We'd love to get on our customer list at some stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on everything that needs to be touched on, you know. And yeah, again, I'll tell you where to mail my check.
Okay, sounds good. Or your watch, or your replacement watch might be more appropriate, Blake.
That would be exceptional. And again, I want to thank you for spending so much time with us, for, you know, for being willing to sit down and have this conversation. You know, it's challenging. I'm starting to realize how challenging it is to have these conversations, you know. Because, you know, the more and more I have podcasts, you know, I guess it becomes harder and harder to get podcast guests on, because they're like, oh, I don't feel like I line up with, you know, some of these all-star people that we've had. And so um and as our podcast grows, you know, people feel, I guess, in a weird way, less likely to come on. It's very weird.
That's
It's,
strange.
it's
No,
the
I think
exact
it's the exact opposite. I feel very, you know, very grateful that you invited us. It's been wonderful. And we love talking about our brand. And as I say, the biggest challenge for us is getting people to understand who we are and what we stand for. And podcasts like this can only help us in a very positive way.
It's a great outlet. It's a great platform. Let's leave it on that high note. And everybody, I am certainly going to link Panzera in the description here. You definitely should check them out. Like I said, it's a brand that really holds true to me. And this is our first time actually meeting, ironically. So I have no affiliation to these guys except the fact that they somehow found me and somehow wanted to come on my podcast and reached out.
And you owned one of our watches a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. And maybe I'll have to see if I can dig up some old wrist pics. I'm sure there's pictures of me floating around on my phone or maybe on my hard drives of me, living life with my Panzera. Maybe I could try and use that for the thumbnail.
Reach out to me after this, and we'll see if we can get a replacement sorted out for you, because we might have nostalgic value for you.
It certainly will. Andrew, thank you so much. Send my regards to Roger, who I've also never communicated with, and
will do.
Thank you so much for coming on The Lonely Wrist.
Very nice. Great to be here. Thanks, Blake. Talk again soon.
You got it. Take care.